You will hear a university lecturer giving a talk on the topic of innovative approaches to learning in the 21st century. For questions 31 to 40, complete the sentences with a word or short phrase. You will hear the recording once only. Now, look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today's lecture explores a fundamental question that educators worldwide are grappling with. How should we teach in the 21st century? We are witnessing a profound shift from what I call the transmission model of education to something far more dynamic and student-centered. This transformation isn't merely about using new technology, it's about completely reimagining the purpose and process of learning itself. To appreciate this shift, we must first understand the traditional approach. For over a century, the dominant pedagogical model has been what Paulo Freire famously termed the banking model of education. In this framework, the teacher is positioned as the expert who deposits knowledge into the minds of passive students. Learners sit in rows, absorb information through lectures, and then reproduce that information in standardized examinations. This model emerged during the Industrial Revolution, designed to produce compliant workers who could follow instructions and perform repetitive tasks. The emphasis was on memorization rather than critical thinking or creativity. So what has driven the need for change? Educational researchers identify three primary catalysts. First, the information explosion of the digital age has made rote memorization increasingly obsolete. When any fact can be retrieved instantly via a smartphone, the value of simply storing information in one's head has diminished considerably. Second, the modern economy demands different competencies. Employers consistently report that they need graduates who can solve complex problems, work collaboratively, and think critically, skills that traditional lecture-based teaching rarely cultivate effectively. The third catalyst, interestingly, comes from neuroscience. Brain imaging studies have revealed that passive listening activates far fewer neural pathways than active engagement with material. Learning, we now understand, is not something done to students, but something they must do for themselves. This evidence has given rise to what many educators call active learning methodologies. Rather than sitting passively, students engage directly with concepts through discussion, problem-solving, and hands-on experimentation. One particularly effective approach is the flipped classroom model. In this structure, students watch recorded lectures or complete readings at home, then use classroom time for collaborative projects, debates, and practical application of concepts. The traditional homework and classwork are literally flipped. Research demonstrates that this approach can significantly improve both understanding and long-term retention of material. Another revolutionary development is personalized learning. Advances in educational software now allow instruction to adapt in real time to each student's pace and learning style. If a student struggles with a particular mathematical concept, the system can provide additional practice exercises and alternative explanations. Conversely, if a student masters content quickly, they can accelerate ahead rather than waiting for the entire class. This addresses a chronic problem in traditional education, the one-size-fits-all approach that inevitably leaves some students bored and others lost. Of course, these innovations bring significant challenges. Perhaps the most pressing is the issue of equity. Not all schools have equal access to technology, high-speed internet, or teacher training in these new methods. there's a real risk that innovative learning becomes a privilege of wealthy districts, thereby widening existing educational gaps rather than closing them. This isn't just a technical problem, it's a profound question of social justice that policymakers must address urgently. Furthermore, there's the question of assessment. If we're moving beyond memorization, how do we measure learning? Traditional examinations often fail to capture skills like creativity, collaboration, or critical thinking. Many progressive institutions are experimenting with portfolio-based assessment, where students compile evidence of their learning journey over time through projects, reflections, and demonstrations of applied knowledge. However, this approach is time-intensive for teachers to evaluate and raises concerns about standardization and fairness. Looking forward, I believe we're heading toward what I call a blended approach. The future of education will not be purely digital, nor will it be a return to chalk and blackboards. Instead, the most effective learning environments will strategically combine face-to-face instruction with digital tools, direct teaching with student-led inquiry, and individual work with collaborative projects. Teachers will transition from being the sage on the stage to becoming what educators now describe as a facilitator, someone who designs learning experiences, asks probing questions, and guides students through their intellectual journey rather than simply delivering content. In conclusion, we stand at a pivotal moment in educational history. The old model, designed for a world that no longer exists, is slowly giving way to approaches that recognize learners as active agents in their own development. The challenge before us is immense. We must prepare young people not for the jobs of today, but for careers that don't yet exist, using technologies not yet invented to solve problems we haven't even identified. That requires an education system that cultivates not just knowledge, but the adaptability, curiosity, and resilience to thrive in perpetual change. Thank you.
That is the end of section. You now have half a minute to check your answers.